subchronic carcinogenicity studies, sorry, I'm a bit with the microphone, when you have that data available, or is just the subchronic study data satisfactory in itself?
Well, judging from the approach of authorities under 91.414, of course, for active substances, you will always have 2-year rat studies and so forth, and they can, the NOELs from these studies, yes, they will be lower than the 90-day studies, but for the AOEL derivation, you would not use them. You would go into the subchronic set of studies and find out the most sensitive NOEL from there, which could be a dog study or could be a rat study. That's where most AOELs come from. So carcinogenicity is really not an issue for subchronic exposures. So if you, for a coformulant, if you have your typical subacute study that you are supposed to have by the registration deadline of this year, so NX8 data under REACH, then you would just use an appropriate assessment factor to make this subacute NOEL into a subchronic DNL. Just don't use an assessment factor of 6 to make it chronic. Use an assessment factor of 3 to keep it subchronic. So using 6 would then be overkill. You might still pass, but it's not necessary. It's just I think it's a discretion of the suppliers what they do. They can see that okay, we have an identified use that's seasonal in nature or subchronic in duration, so we could think about deriving a subchronic DNL. I know it's rarely done, but in this case it would be valid. And it doesn't take more than just adjusting the assessment factor for duration.
Yeah, thank you.
I think when doing risk assessments for operators and workers, one thing that we have to really think about is like the duration of exposure. And carcinogenicity studies are usually used for dietary exposure where people are exposed, assumed to be exposed to chemicals on a daily basis for a lifetime. However, workers and operators usually are exposed to pesticides for maybe a couple of weeks, maybe 3 to 4 weeks. In seed treatment plants, maybe a little more because they could be treating seed with the same product, okay, for 2 to 3 months. But usually farmers, you're looking at a 28-day or a 90-day study being pivotal studies to set your operator exposure limits. So I think when we do our risk assessments, please keep in mind the duration of exposures. Farmers do not get exposed to pesticides for every day for long periods of time, and that should be considered during your risk assessment.
Thank you for this comment. There's a question over there.
Yeah. Hi, this question is for Alan. Alan, I'm Sheng Yi with DuPont. In the event where a downstream user's use is not covered and we have to generate our own downstream user CSR, I was wondering where can we get some of the information that we might need for the downstream user CSR, and I was just wondering if Cefic has or anybody has spearheaded any kind of discussion for getting these additional information, because for example, for the ESDS, we may receive an ESDS for preparations, and in which case we may not have substance-specific DNLs. So how can we get these DNLs, substance-specific DNLs, for the downstream user CSR?
Thank you for the question.
Can you take the microphone, please?
Is it okay like that? Yeah. Of course, if a downstream user's use is not supported by a supplier, which can occur, in theory, and if he wishes to go on with the business with this downstream user, he should provide all the necessary information about the substances in order that the downstream user is able to make its chemical safety assessment, meaning the hazard properties of the substances. Of course, the frame of discussions and the content should be clear, and there needs, let's say, agreement between indeed the supplier and the downstream user. But in order that the downstream user is able to make its own chemical safety assessment, chemical safety report, it should have the necessary information by the supplier. Again, we are here under, let's say, business relationship. The downstream user could simply perhaps as well ask for another supplier if he wishes to cover this specific use in the CSR, and otherwise indeed find the information. Keep in mind as well that there will be information published on the ECHA website once the registration dossier will be submitted, and which will be freely available normally, what is called the dissemination. So perhaps as well from this information some hazardous properties of substances. Regarding the specific intellectual property rights, meaning, as you said, in mixtures, the content of specific co-formulants can be hidden perhaps. Then there needs, I guess, I fear, business negotiations, and otherwise try to find another supplier. That's the best I can answer, I guess. I don't know if somebody else wants to give its view on this.
I can add something, sure. On the safety data sheets, expanded safety data sheets for the tier 1 submissions, I think you will find all these informations you need to do your calculations. But then you need to wait for 13 and 18 to have the expanded safety data sheets from the suppliers. Then you have all this information you need. So, more questions?
Franziska Heuschmidt from BASF. I have one question for Volker regarding the CSR format which is generated by this tool. At the end of March, I think ECHA has published a new draft guidance regarding the exposure scenario format, which seems will become the future standard. It will be implemented in CESAR and is used by different consortia at the moment. So is it intended or possible to revise this format according to this new draft?
Well, simple answer is no, because if you intend to cover all updates that ECHA ever makes, then you'll be restless, just chasing their. It's like they're chasing us with new releases. Then you're using the giving you new use descriptors, changing formats, introducing new tools. In the mid of the race, they're changing the horses. We know, I think Andreas Ahrens of ECHA talked about that a couple of days ago in Berlin on a workshop, and he told us that the choice of format is at the discretion of whoever writes the CSR. And that's an important thing to notice. This is, of course, the format I've proposed or incorporated into the tool reflects the state of the art that is now valid, or the CSR dot or that you can use now, that's downloadable. I think the exposure assessment now it has some kind of colored tables that precede pretty much what Chapter 9 is all about, but you still have these tables that are in the CSR templates that I have developed. So it's not. It has not become redundant now. There's now some additional tables, and they're more fancy, and they precede pretty much Chapter 9. I don't think it will be hard to make the tool create something that looks like what is now going to be the next big thing. So, but there have been no plans, because, as I said, there will be no end to anything if you just try to be ahead of ECHA all the time, or just in line with them. So at some point we just had to make the cut. Okay, I was thinking about it. Do we do some last minute revisions of the model, and then just risking that you introduce new. I mean, if you fiddle around with Excel macros, that's just something. It's really error prone. You will be ending up creating or messing up your tool by making the table look like Eka wants them to look like.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to add something?
Yes. In the directors contract group I mentioned before, it was clearly highlighted the fact that industry cannot change its position like that in the dossier preparation phase, and we really want to make them sure and to understand that no, and I think that it has been acknowledged, even if the guidance are changing and if industry has no time for implementing, then sorry, but it's not industry's fault, and we have to freeze the situation at some time in order that industry can safely build a dossier on firm basis. And please keep in mind, as Volker said, what was done in the past is not rubbish. And as soon as you're able to show in your dossier that your risks are saved, well, it's not because you used use descriptors A or B. If you can show that your use is safe, then this is it. And ECA has to accept it, full stop. And
they will. Yeah.
And they will. Well, otherwise, I think they would have big troubles, legal problems anyway. Just to make sure, the work, and this is why we say as well that the CIFs will go far after 2018. This is a constantly evolving work. Science is still moving, knowledge is being developed, reach is new. So the main problem is that there is a regulatory deadline for you companies, no data, no market registration, and so on. But as long as you have made and documented that you've done the best to comply, then you're safe. Of course, there will be some updates of registration perhaps after, because of science evolving, because of new tools, but please keep in mind what is important for industry. Do your stuff correctly in good willingness and be registered on time. And this is it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know that there is no obligation for any format, but yes, I know the current developments within CHESAR and within the extended safety datasheet proclamations. And yes, and I know that they will stick to that format, so would be nice in a way of standardization or something like that to have maybe sometimes later this format. But of course, I totally agree with you that there is no obligation and that other formats are not rubbish or something like that. So.
Maybe just one more comment. I know that CHESAR will have some kind of interface to interact with specific exposure scenarios developed by certain industry sectors. I have not seen it in person, but there will be an option to upload all kinds of externally generated exposure data. That could be one option to make to import whatever we get out of this tool into CHESAR, have it there, and then it needs to chew on these data and incorporate that into a new CSR. But we have people, colleagues of mine, they have used now CHESAR in a test phase. I have not personally worked with it. I have used the new supposed upcoming CSR exposure assessment format. It does not contain any additional information. It's just condensed into one table, whereas the format I'm using now is just spread out over one scenario after another. But it's highly redundant. It won't hurt to continue using this one, and maybe there will be an elegant option to make the OWB tool feed into CHESAR. We have to wait for whatever we will be presented with.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.